The room was silent, the kind of silence that crushed the air, pressing down on the shoulders of the leaders gathered inside Earth's war chamber. The holographic image of High Marshal Varkan loomed above them, his red eyes burning with cold amusement. "Earth!" Varkan's voice slithered through the speakers, calm and measured, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You stand on the precipice of extinction. Your weapons are outdated. Your fleets are dust compared to the Dominion's might. Your existence continues only because we allow it." The world leaders sat motionless, some gripping the edges of the table, others casting weary glances at one another. President Adana Wells cleared her throat, her voice steady but weary. "If we surrender, what terms do you offer?" Varkan chuckled, a hollow mechanical sound. "Terms? You will become a vassal state integrated into the Dominion. Your species will be cataloged, monitored, and repurposed." His head tilted slightly. "A handful of you may live comfortably under our rule. The rest will serve." A sharp scoff broke through the tension. Commander Elias Drake, standing at the far end of the room, crossed his arms. His steel-gray eyes were locked onto the alien envoy, with barely restrained fury. "You're offering slavery with a different name." Varkan turned his gaze to Drake, regarding him like one might inspect an insect beneath their boot. "Ah, the soldier, the stubborn breed. Every species has them, the ones who think defiance matters in the face of absolute power." His voice dropped lower, almost amused. "Your primitive nature fascinates me." Drake took a slow step forward. "And your arrogance disgusts me." The air in the room shifted. The leaders flinched, unsure whether to fear Drake's words or the inevitable response from the Dominion. Varkan didn't react immediately. Instead, he exhaled, as if speaking with such inferiors exhausted him. Then, with a flick of his fingers, the holographic transmission shifted. A new image materialized beside him, a live feed of Earth's orbital defense station, Sentinel-9. The station, once a symbol of Earth's last line of defense, hung in space like a forgotten relic. "Let me demonstrate what defiance earns you," Varkan said. Drake's fist clenched. "Don't!" The room collectively held its breath as the station exploded. A ball of fire blossomed in the vacuum of space, sending burning debris scattering into the black abyss. The feed cut out, but not before showing the faces of the crew trapped inside, their silent screams swallowed by the void. Gasps echoed through the chamber. President Wells shot to her feet, her hands trembling. "You murdered thousands!" Varkan shrugged. "I eliminated an obstacle. You have 7 days to surrender. If you do not..." He smiled, slow and deliberate. "Next, we cleanse your cities." The transmission cut off, leaving the room in heavy, suffocating silence. Drake turned, his jaw tight, barely containing his fury. "Are we seriously still considering surrender?" A senator wiped his face with shaking hands. "We can't fight them, Drake. You saw what they did. One command and they erased an entire station. What do you think they'll do to Earth?" "We'll fight," Drake said without hesitation. A different voice, colder and more skeptical, cut through the room. General Hawkins, one of Earth's senior military officials, folded his hands on the table. "With what? We don't have the firepower, the fleet, or the manpower. The Dominion has crushed civilizations older and stronger than us." Drake stepped forward, the sharpness in his gaze slicing through the room. "Then we don't fight like they expect us to. We don't give them a war on their terms." Hawkins shook his head. "That's madness." Drake exhaled sharply. "No, surrendering is madness. Letting them hurt us like cattle, erase our culture, our people, everything we are. That is madness." He slammed his fist against the table. "I'll die before I kneel." Silence. President Wells rubbed her temples. "Drake, I understand your anger, but..." "You don't understand anything," Drake interrupted, his voice raw with grief and fury. "I had people on that station. I trained some of them. I knew their names, their families, and in seconds they were wiped out like they never existed." His voice wavered for only a moment before he caught himself. He looked around, eyes sweeping over the men and women who held Earth's fate in their hands. "If we surrender, we spit on their graves." Hawkins leaned back, exhausted. "Then what do you propose?" Drake's expression hardened. We take the fight underground. We abandon traditional warfare. We use tactics they can't predict, weapons they won't expect. We become the ghosts in the dark, the nightmare they can't kill. The room stirred with unease. President Wells sighed. Drake, this isn't just about revenge. It's about survival. Exactly, he said. Survival means we make them fear us. A young officer, one of Drake's own, spoke up, hesitantly. What if we lose? Drake turned to him, his expression unreadable. Then we make sure the Dominion pays for every last breath they take from us. The tension in the room thickened, lines being drawn between those who feared annihilation and those who refused to go quietly. Some exchanged nervous glances, others stared at their hands, lost in thought. Finally, President Wells spoke, her voice quiet but resolute. You have 7 days, Commander. Do whatever it takes. She paused, then met his gaze. Make them regret coming here. Drake's lips curled into a sharp, grim smile. They already do. The underground bunker was dimly lit, the stale air thick with quiet tension. Drake stood at the center of the war room, staring down at the crude maps spread across the metal table. Red dots marked Dominion strongholds. Blue circles marked Earth's last remaining resistance cells. The balance wasn't just uneven, it was impossible. 7 days, he muttered under his breath. They think they've already won. A small chuckle came from the corner. They always think that. The voice belonged to Ronan Pierce, an ex-Black Ops specialist with more scars than smiles. That's what makes it so damn fun when they realize they haven't. Drake's gaze shifted toward the other gathered fighters, a ragtag mix of engineers, hackers, ex-military, and even civilians who had never held a weapon before. They weren't soldiers. They weren't ready for a war, but they had one anyway. Let's get this straight. Lieutenant Naomi Voss, the group's best strategist, leaned forward, tapping the map with a gloved hand. The official government is caving. They're preparing to surrender behind closed doors. And they think we don't know, added Marcus Lee, one of the best cyber criminals Earth had ever branded a threat. They've been sending encoded transmissions to the Dominion under the guise of peace talks. Drake scoffed, shaking his head. Of course they are. They think survival is better than freedom. Ronan stretched his legs, leaning back lazily. We could storm the council chambers, drag them out by their throats, make them fight instead of fold. We'd be dead before we made it past security, Naomi cut in. We don't waste time on politics. We fight. Drake nodded. Exactly, and we don't fight their way. He gestured to the map. The Dominion is bigger, stronger, faster. Their warships, advanced. Their soldiers, genetically enhanced. But there's one thing they don't have. Marcus smirked. A sense of humor? Naomi rolled her eyes. Unpredictability, she corrected. They rely on patterns, strategy, AI-assisted warfare. If we throw out the rulebook, they won't know how to counter us. Drake smiled for the first time in days. We fight dirty. Ronan laughed. Now you're speaking my language. Naomi tapped the map again. We hit them where it hurts. Their communications, their supply chains, their blind spots. We don't aim for victory in one battle. We bleed them out. Marcus adjusted his glasses, fingers flying across his portable console. I can jam their transmissions, but we need something bigger. Something that'll make them doubt their own systems. Ronan cracked his knuckles. EMP strikes, AI disruptors. Hell, we could even reroute their own drones against them. Drake's jaw tightened. We'll need weapons. Voss exhaled sharply. Earth's stockpile is depleted. The few working nukes we have wouldn't even scratch their capital ships. Then we make new ones, Drake said. Silence filled the room. Marcus blinked. You want to build nukes? Not just nukes, weapons they won't expect. Drake looked at the engineers. Repurpose anything we can. Old warheads, chemical agents, even scrap metal. Turn Earth's junk into their worst nightmare. One of the younger fighters, a civilian named Theo, swallowed hard. We don't have a chance, do we? Drake turned to him, voice steady. Only if we fight fair. Theo nodded slowly, understanding. Naomi tapped the table again, switching the map to show Luna Base, a once-defunct military outpost on Earth's moon. The Dominion is sending a scouting party here in 24 hours. Small force, no major firepower. We take them out, we get their weapons and armor. First real test of our plan. Ronan grinned. Finally, I was getting bored. Drake's voice lowered, steady but cold. This is the first step. We make them bleed. We make them afraid. The room fell silent, and then, as one, they nodded. 24 hours later, the night sky above the moon was alive with fire and chaos. Drake crouched behind a jagged rock formation, his rifle pressed against his shoulder as he watched the Dominion's scouting team move cautiously through the ruins of Luna Base. Their armor gleamed under the dim light, their movements mechanical, precise. Perfect soldiers. Too perfect. He signaled to his team. Naomi's voice crackled in his earpiece. Positions ready, waiting on you. Drake smirked. Light them up. The first EMP mine detonated beneath the leading Dominion soldier, sending arcs of electricity crawling over his armor. He convulsed, then collapsed motionless. The others turned sharply, their weapons rising. Too late. Bullets ripped through the silence. Explosions shattered the once quiet expanse of the lunar outpost. The Dominion forces, caught off guard, struggled to adapt. Their training relied on structured warfare, not the chaos humanity had just thrown them into. Drake sprinted forward, taking cover behind a fallen satellite dish. He fired 3 precise shots. 2 dropped their targets instantly. The third staggered back, his helmet visor cracking from the impact. From above, Naomi and her team rained down hellfire from a sniper perch, picking off the Dominion soldiers one by one. Theo, nervous but determined, launched a homemade grenade fashioned from old mining equipment. It landed between 2 soldiers before igniting in a flash of blue energy, sending both flying. Marcus's virus activated, and suddenly Dominion targeting systems scrambled, forcing them into confusion. A single Dominion captain remained, chest rising and falling with deep, controlled breaths. He raised his rifle toward Drake. Before he could fire, Ronan's knife found his throat. The body crumpled. Silence. For the first time, there was no alien voice barking orders, no holographic command, just the sound of human victory. Drake exhaled, stepping over the fallen enemy and picking up one of their rifles. The weight was unfamiliar but satisfying. Luna Base is ours, Naomi confirmed. Drake looked at the bodies scattered around him, then at the weapons they now had. They thought we'd be weak, he murmured. Ronan wiped his blade clean. They thought wrong. Marcus knelt beside a Dominion helmet, inspecting its internal systems. You know they'll come looking for these guys. Drake nodded, a grim smile forming. Let them. For the first time in history, humanity had struck back, and it was just the beginning. The cold void of space was filled with the thunderous presence of the Dominion fleet. Rows upon rows of colossal warships, sleek and metallic, surrounded Earth like an unbreakable cage. Their weapons, silent but menacing, glowed with the unnatural energy of a force that had crushed civilizations without breaking a sweat. From the bridge of the Warbringer, High Marshal Varkon watched Earth with the eyes of a predator toying with its prey. His lips curled in amusement as the Dominion's communication systems began broadcasting the final call for surrender. People of Earth, the deep metallic voice rang out across every communication line, every screen, every radio signal. This is your last chance. You have fought bravely, but bravery without power is meaningless. Lay down your arms and you will be spared. Deep beneath the ruins of Earth's last standing city, Commander Elias Drake stood inside a war-torn command bunker, listening to the Dominion's arrogant decree. He exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the metal table where his team stood waiting. Naomi's voice was cold. They really think we're going to bow. Marcus smirked, checking his terminal. They have no idea what's coming. Drake straightened. Let's show them. The transmission cut out, replaced by Earth's final answer. A deafening explosion in the darkness of space. A nuclear mine, hidden in the debris field of Earth's destroyed orbital defenses, ignited in a blinding inferno. A Dominion battleship was instantly torn apart, its shattered remains scattering like splinters across the fleet. Panic rippled through the Dominion ranks. What was that? Varkon demanded, turning sharply to his officers. The response was immediate. A detonation within our formation. Our ship was vaporized, High Marshal. Varkon's expression darkened. He turned his gaze back to Earth. They didn't surrender. They're fighting back. And then the ambush began. From behind clouds of debris, Earth's remaining fighter squadrons burst into the battlefield, weaving between the behemoth Dominion warships like mosquitoes harassing a beast. Their ships were old, mismatched, barely functioning, but they moved with deadly purpose. On the surface, human ground forces sprung their traps. The streets had been rigged with explosives, old missiles, and EMP generators scavenged from the remains of Earth's military. The Dominion shock troopers, expecting a simple extermination, were instead met with chaos. EMP waves rippled through the Dominion's ranks, disabling cybernetic enhancements in their automated drones. Suddenly, the once unstoppable alien warriors were forced into hand-to-hand combat with desperate, battle-hardened guerrilla fighters. Drake's comm crackled. "The Dominion's ground forces are faltering," Naomi reported. "They don't know how to fight without their tech." "Then press them harder," Drake ordered, strapping into his stolen Dominion armor. "They think they've seen hell? Let's give them the real thing." Above, inside the Warbringer, Varkon's patience snapped. "Enough!" His claws tightened against the console. "Unleash the main cannons. Destroy the surface cities. End this." Before the order could be carried out, an alarm blared. "High Marshal, we have intruders." Varkon's head whipped around. "What?" Inside the Dominion flagship, Drake's strike team had infiltrated the Warbringer using stolen Dominion codes. The ship was too big to be completely secure. There were blind spots, forgotten maintenance shafts, and areas where the Dominion's arrogance had left them vulnerable. Drake and his team moved like shadows, taking down Dominion guards with swift, brutal efficiency. "Almost at the command deck," Naomi whispered through the comms, pressing herself against the cold steel of the corridors. "They have no idea we're here." Drake's lips curled. "They will." They breached the doors. Inside the command chamber, Varkon turned, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the battered, blood-stained human standing in the doorway. "How did you—" Drake raised his rifle and fired. The shot ripped through Varkon's shoulder, sending the High Marshal staggering back. Around him, Dominion officers scrambled for weapons, but Naomi's team was faster. Within seconds, the command room was in human hands. Varkon clutched his wound, staring at the impossible. "You?" he sneered. "You are nothing. A primitive, desperate species clinging to a rock." Drake stepped forward, placing the barrel of his gun against Varkon's chest. "Then explain why you're the one bleeding." Without another word, he pulled the trigger. Varkon collapsed, his lifeless eyes staring into nothing. The Warbringer was now under Earth's control. Drake pressed his comm. "Naomi, status." She was already working the console. "We've locked down their fleet communications. They're cut off from command." Drake smirked. "Send the message. Let them know their leader is dead." Moments later, the Dominion fleet hesitated. They had never known hesitation before. But as the reality of the situation sank in, the cracks in their invincible image began to show. The Warbringer, once their unshakable flagship, now displayed a broadcast of Varkon's lifeless body. The Dominion forces broke. Ships began to retreat. Ground forces scrambled for extraction. The great, unstoppable war machine had just lost its heart. Drake watched from the command deck as the fleet began pulling back. For the first time in history, Earth had made them run. Naomi exhaled in disbelief. "They're actually retreating." Ronan let out a slow laugh. "Guess they don't like fighting a war they can't win." Drake's expression was unreadable. He knew this wasn't over. The Dominion was wounded, but a wounded beast is always the most dangerous. Still, for now, they had done the impossible. Earth had struck back and won. The war room was quiet, filled with the weight of exhaustion and the certainty of what was coming next. The holographic map flickered in the dim light, showing the Dominion's reinforcements speeding toward Earth. The first battle was over, but the real war was about to begin. Naomi ran a hand through her sweat-soaked hair, her voice tight. "They're coming in fast. Twice the fleet size, 3 times the firepower. We barely survived round 1. How the hell are we supposed to beat this?" Marcus exhaled, rubbing his temples. "We don't." Not in the way they expect. Drake stood at the center of it all, silent, his eyes scanning the display. He could feel the exhaustion in the room, the unspoken fear pressing against his team like a vice. But there was something else too. Determination. "They're mad," he finally said. "We made them bleed. We did something no one's ever done. Now they want revenge." He straightened, his voice steady. "And that's what we use against them." Ronan leaned back against the table, arms crossed. "You got a plan? Or are we just going to throw rocks and insults at them until we run out of both?" Drake smirked. "A little of both." He gestured at the map, shifting the display to the Dominion's flagship, the new Warbringer. Larger than anything humanity had ever built, it was a floating fortress, nearly indestructible. "That's where we end this," Drake continued. "We're not fighting them in orbit, not on the ground. We take the fight to the heart of their fleet." Naomi's eyes widened. "You want to infiltrate their flagship? That's suicide." Marcus adjusted his glasses. "No, it's worse than suicide. It's insane." Drake ignored them, zooming in on the ship's schematics, stolen from their last battle. "This thing isn't just a warship. It's their command center. Take it out, and their entire fleet falls into disarray." Ronan let out a slow whistle. "You're talking about decapitating the snake." Drake nodded. "Exactly." Theo, still fresh to the fight, swallowed hard. "And how are we supposed to do that? Walk in and ask nicely?" Marcus snorted. "With the right codes, we can get in. The Dominion's overconfidence is their weakness. They never expected anyone to get inside their systems." His fingers flew over his portable console. "I can forge clearance for a troop transport. That gets us on board. But after that, we're on our own." Naomi still looked skeptical. "We'd need something powerful enough to actually take that ship out. A fleet that size could absorb a direct nuke." Drake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black device the size of his palm. "We have something better." Marcus blinked. "Is that what I think it is?" Drake tossed it onto the table. "The Leviathan virus." Silence. Naomi's breath caught. That's banned tech. That thing was deemed too dangerous to use, even during the first Earth Wars." Drake's expression was cold. "Which is why we're using it." Theo leaned forward, staring at the device like it was a loaded gun. "What does it do?" Marcus exhaled. "It's an AI disruptor, a cybernetic plague. Instead of destroying a system outright, it rewrites its core functions, turning every piece of tech into an enemy of itself." He looked at Drake. "If this thing gets into their mainframe, their entire fleet could go dark." "Not just dark," Drake corrected, "turned against them. Their targeting systems, their defenses, everything controlled by AI would see their own ships as hostile." He met their eyes. "We won't just shut them down. We'll make them tear themselves apart." Ronan let out a low laugh. "Now that's more like it." Naomi's hesitation was still there, but she sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. "Assuming we survive the infiltration and plant the virus, how do we get out?" Drake was silent. They all understood. Naomi clenched her jaw. "Damn it, Drake!" Marcus looked away. Theo swallowed hard. Ronan was the first to break the silence. "All right then, who's in?" Marcus sighed. "Well, if I was going to die, at least it's in the most reckless way possible." He tapped his console. "I'll handle the infiltration systems." Naomi exhaled. "Fine. But if we make it out alive, I'm punching you in the face, Drake." Theo nodded slowly. "I never planned on living forever anyway." Ronan grinned. "Let's go kill a goddamn empire." Drake nodded, eyes cold with determination. "Then let's move." No one looked back. There was no more time for hesitation. The final mission was set. Earth's last stand had just begun. The Dominion fleet emerged from the darkness, a wall of steel and fire descending upon Earth like the wrath of the gods. Their warships stretched across the sky, blocking out the stars, their cannons charging with blinding energy. This was the final blow, the crushing strike that would erase humanity forever. High Marshal Varkon's voice boomed through the fleet's comms. "Today we end this. Wipe them from existence." Inside Earth's last remaining bunker, the Resistance forces stood in silence, watching their sensors light up with enemy signatures. Naomi's voice was calm, but her hands clenched into fists. "They're here!" Drake adjusted the straps of his stolen Dominion armor, his face unreadable. "Then let's give them a welcome they'll never forget." The moment the first Dominion ship broke into low orbit, the trap was sprung. From the wreckage of destroyed space stations and abandoned satellites, ancient nuclear warheads ignited in rapid succession. The fleet lurched in confusion as massive shockwaves rippled through their ranks, tearing smaller warships apart, leaving larger ones crippled and reeling. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, the Warbringer, alarms blared. Varkon slammed a fist against the command console. "How? They have nothing left!" An officer's voice cracked with disbelief. It's their old weapons, sir. They've hidden them in the debris field. We've walked straight into their kill zone." Before Varkon could react, another catastrophe struck. Marcus's virus, planted days before, activated. Dominion AI-controlled battleships turned on each other, their targeting systems scrambling. Turrets fired wildly, dreadnoughts crushed their own fleets, chaos spreading through what had once been an unstoppable armada. On the ground, Naomi let out a sharp breath. "It's working." Ronan grinned. "Damn right it is." Drake didn't stop to celebrate. He grabbed his weapon and turned toward his team. "We're not done yet. We still need to take down the Warbringer." A single stolen Dominion transport, disguised by hacked clearance codes, slipped through the chaos, docking onto the enemy flagship unnoticed. Inside the Warbringer's corridors, Drake's team moved quickly, eliminating patrols before they could sound an alarm. Marcus tapped furiously at his wrist console. "Security systems are fragmented, but we don't have long. They'll notice us soon." Drake pushed forward. "Then we move fast." The plan was simple. Get to the reactor core, upload the Leviathan virus, and cripple the Dominion from within. But nothing was ever simple. The alarm screamed through the Warbringer, and the ship lurched violently. Their cover was blown. Heavy Dominion soldiers stormed the hallways, plasma rifles lighting up the corridors with deadly fire. Naomi dove behind cover, returning fire with precision shots. "We're running out of time, Drake," she shouted. He pressed his comm. "Marcus, get to the core. Upload the virus. I'll cover you." Marcus hesitated. "What about you?" Drake turned, guns blazing, mowing down advancing soldiers. His expression was unreadable. "Just move." Marcus ran, disappearing into the core chamber. The fight was brutal. Ronan took a shot to the side but grinned through the pain. "Gonna take more than that, you ugly bastards." Naomi's rifle overheated, and she switched to her knife, taking down a Dominion soldier in a savage melee. Drake fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Varkon's voice rang through the ship's intercom. "You're all going to die here. Earth will burn." Drake barely heard him. He was already running toward the core. Inside, Marcus was at the control panel, fingers flying over the Dominion's security interface. "Almost there. Just need another minute." A gunshot echoed. Marcus staggered. A Dominion captain, bleeding but alive, had put a round straight through his chest. Drake caught Marcus before he hit the ground, gripping his vest. "Stay with me." Marcus coughed, blood trickling from his lips. "The virus, it's not fully uploaded. Someone has to..." He gasped, his body going limp. Drake clenched his jaw. There was no time to mourn. The virus was almost done, but it needed one final manual activation. Naomi's voice crackled through his comm. "Drake, we need to go. The ship's collapsing." Drake stared at the final sequence. There was no way to activate it remotely. He pressed his comm. "Naomi, get out." A beat of silence. Then Naomi's voice, sharp and desperate. No, you don't get to do this." Ronan's voice cut in, anger barely contained. "Drake, don't you dare." Drake exhaled, a small, almost sad smile on his face. "No other way." Varkon's voice returned, laced with cruel amusement. "You lose, human." Drake pressed the final command. The Leviathan virus unleashed itself into the Warbringer's systems, infecting everything. Varkon barely had time to scream before the ship began devouring itself. Naomi's sob caught in her throat. "Drake!" His last words came through the comms, steady, unshaken. "Make them remember us." And then the core detonated. From the surface of Earth, Humanity watched in awe as the Warbringer, the heart of the Dominion's fleet, began to break apart. The virus spread like wildfire. Dominion warships turned on each other, cannons firing into their own ranks, fighters spiraling out of control. Their perfect organized military descended into absolute chaos. Within moments, the once great Dominion fleet was gone. Silence fell over the battlefield. The unthinkable had happened. Earth had won. Naomi and Ronan, barely escaping in time, stood on the ground, staring up at the sky, faces tight with grief and triumph. Theo wiped at his face, breath shaking. "He did it!" Ronan clenched his fists. "Yeah," he muttered, voice rough. "The bastard actually did it." Naomi inhaled sharply, then she saluted the sky. The Dominion's reign was over, and Elias Drake was legend.